What's good, YouTube? It's me, boy Scotty, back in another video. Today I want to talk to you guys about popular side deck cards that are going to be very, very good for the Duelist Nexus upcoming season. And let's start off with a bang with DROLL and Lockbird. So this was a popular card pretty much not too long ago, just pre-ban list, you know, when we had Super Heavy Samurai and stuff floating around. And it turns out that Duelist Nexus is actually giving us a lot of support for pre-existing decks that happen to do a lot of adding. So that compounded with the fact that they're pretty good against pre-existing decks. Things like Purely that we already have. It's not too bad against Cashier as well. Makes it a decent pick in my opinion. Now, there are a lot of new support cards that are going to make certain decks that are pre-existing like Vanadium a lot stronger. People are also starting to catch on that Revolution Synchron is so busted that they're playing cards like Tuning and whatnot. A lot of cards are going to be doing a lot of adding. And for the decks that are not doing a lot of adding, they're still playing cards like Pot of Prosperity or things that will add from the deck to the hand. So you can nearly always catch them on a whim with that. And not to mention, there's also a broken Dark World card called Dark Corridor that's coming out, so people are going to be experimenting with Dark World and certain rogue decks. People are playing ABCs with Revolution Synchron. There are a lot of strategies involving Revolution Synchron and the new cards in the set that allow them to add from the deck to the hand, so you being able to stop their combo with the DROLL and Lockbird is a big hit in my opinion. There are also pre-existing decks like Dragon Link. Of course, we can't forget that Lubellion and certain cards in that deck are still adding, so being able to cut them off from comboing is very something that I would definitely suggest in the side deck at least. Now, it's not going to stop everything, but it's still good enough that you still want to play it so you are able to stop certain cards. Moving on, another popular card I want to talk about is a board breaker, Evenly Matched. I know a lot of people are kind of dropping this card because of the battle phase was so important, but it just happens that this card, again, like DROLL and Lockbird, was already pretty good against pre-existing decks, okay? It was not bad by any means. It was not amazing, but it was decently good. And there are certain decks coming out in the upcoming set. For example, Rescue Ace, which is getting a huge boost in the support cards that it's getting. So this deck essentially sets 4 cards using Rescue Ace Turbulence, if unimpeded. So the only way to really play through that, unless your hand is godlike, is ideally with an equalizer board breaker like Evenly Matched, which would allow you to banish all of their cards that they set, and then go into your main phase 2 and continue to combo, given that all of the cards are going to be disappeared into the vanished face down pile, and they're going to have no way to recursion back either. So in my opinion, it's quite good. And another card is Lightning Storm for that matter. In the similar vein of Evenly Matched being good, this is a blanket board wipe that requires only 1 card and also allows you to continue playing in your battle phase because you're not skipping anything. The only caveat is you have to control no face-up cards, which is easily done when going second. So I feel like it was already a decent card. People were citing it in against certain decks like Kashtira. Against Purely, you can wipe their back row, wipe their continuous spell and their field spell. So there's a lot of application. And now that we have more decks that are playing certain back rows, which you have to deal with, they're playing certain field spells, which can be a nuisance, this card just deals with it all. And it's decently good against Rescue Ace because you can wipe out their entire back row and continue to play during your main phase 1 without skipping your battle phase. It's decent against other decks that play certain back rows. Against even against like decks like Sprite, you can still like bait out if they already have like an extra deck monster, which half the time they do. You can bait out a negation from Sprite Carrot to negate it, so it's not the end of the world. And in my opinion, it's just such a good card that being able to use it across a variety of matchups, in my opinion, definitely warrants a spot in the side deck. So I would say between Evenly Matched and or Lightning Storm, at least to start for the first week or so of the format until things shape up and we have a good definition of what cards are actually good, what decks are actually terrorizing the metagame, and what cards we have to prioritize. To that effect, I think Infinite Impermanence is actually very good because it's good across the board. So you guys are seeing a common trend where these cards are all good against the entire board because I feel like this upcoming metagame is going to be mega diverse. We already seen a really diverse WCQ over the tail end of this current season. And if the Duelist Nexus is any indication of that, the fact that we're getting a bunch of broken new support for pre-existing decks, as well as some new cards, some new decks here and there, in my opinion, I feel like cards that are good against as many matchups as possible or decent as against as many matchups as possible is something that we should be flocking to. And Infinite Impermanence happen to do with a lot of things. You can deal with Cashier A-Rise Heart being on the table, something you can't get rid of, the banishing effect. You can deal with Rescue Ace Turbulence, which is huge because they're not going to be able to set 4 cards, which is their typical power play. So that's going to make the deck a lot watered down and easy for you to run over. You can even hit things like Pure Lily, provided they don't have the field spell, which they're not going to have every time. So you being able to hit a Pure Lily on the effect is very impactful, especially when they're going -1 on each discard off their quick play spell cards, right? So in my opinion, this card is actually quite good. It's decent against the adventure piles as well. You're going to be able to pair it with another hand trap to take care of the Wandering Griffin Rider, and thereby either dropping a nib or doing something to stop them in their tracks. A lot of decks like Tearlaments are also making use of Revolution Synchron by using something like a Beast King of the Swamp, which is a level 4, to go into something like an Ancient Fairy Dragon. So being able to infinite impermanence the Ancient Fairy Dragon could mean that they're cut off from whatever engine field spell they're trying to access, and also the special summon level 4 or lower from their hand effect. So this could be a very impactful card in my opinion. Same thing with like cards like Effect Failure, but I feel like Impermanence is just a notch higher because you can obviously use it as your 6th card when you draw it off the top of your deck, and also just being versatile that it can be used in any phase. For example, when Purely try to play around Droll and Lockbird by summoning their monsters in the draw phase, this card can be very clutch. Retaliating Sea is another card that I really want to emphasize because I know that there are a lot of decks that are actually using spell cards at this moment to special summon. We have Purely, which all of their spell cards, obviously you can chain Retaliating Sea, which serves as a pseudo dimension shifter. Even against like decks like the Sunderland Rika, you can hit the Sunmine Sowing, so at that point in the combo it starts banishing everything, which means that they're going to have to play their combo out a little differently. And on top of everything, you know, Retaliating Sea has the ability to search a potential insect, so if you are playing like Contacting Sea or something along that line, it could potentially give you a added bonus there. And it's just a level 4 body, which I feel like is really, really good to have when you start your turn, because if that body survives on the field, you can easily make something like an XYZ play to make a Zeus if you're playing rank 4s, or just make a Link or a Synchro play. And it's decently good against Branded, being able to hit the Branded fusion. And I should definitely mention that there are new Branded support in the form of Chimera cards. So being able to chain it to Chimera fusion, I think is quite good, because the Chimera monsters don't really get their effects when they are banished. So yeah, like Performat the Great Wings, if this card is sent to the graveyard as a fusion material for a fusion summon. So being able to Retaliating Sea stops that and ensures that you get a free advantage and get a body on board. So I really, really like that. You can hit things like the Runics when they're trying to special summon a Runic monster from their extra deck to the extra monster zone, and it just starts banishing everything. It creates a huge nuisance, and I think this card is really underrated. I've seen people playing it in the OCG, and I think in TCG this could be a very, very nice addition. Despite the fact that you cannot search Max C, unfortunately, it's still good enough to warrant an inclusion in any side deck. Like Retaliating Sea, you could also even use on Scareclaw Arrival. So for the Vanadium decks that are playing the Scareclaw engine, which I believe all of them do, being able to use it right there could stop potentially a lot of their combo. And then on top of that, you just get a monster on the board. So I think it's definitely worth considering. I actually still think Dark Ruler is still a really good side deck card. We can't forget that there are pre-existing decks that have not yet been hit by the ban list. We haven't had a ban list, guys. We're just getting a new set. Everyone's kind of overhyping the new support cards, so it means that people are going to play a diversity of decks, but there's still going to be a lot of players playing the old, trusted, and proven decks, things like the Runic Sprites, so having a way to deal with that board is especially crucial. Like when they have a bunch of negates, you can't just whittle down your entire engine hand into that. You can't play into that board, because the chances are, even if you crack it, they're going to come back on the next turn and crack whatever resources you put onto the board, which is likely your whole hand. So having non-engine cards that are powerful and high impact like Dark Ruler no more is really crucial. We also have big Vanadium piles that are taking advantage of Revolution Synchron. People are playing Synchro decks, they're putting up a bunch of Omni Negates, so being able to clear their entire field with one card is very nice in my personal opinion, and I would love to see this card being side decked in people's decks to ensure that we're able to deal with these big boards and these heavy combo decks that are going to see for sure a resurgence in the metagame for this upcoming format. And then another card I want to talk about on the same vein of Dark Ruler No More is actually Forbidden Droplet. And this is a really cheap card right now because no one's playing it, because the fact is a Rise Heart stops it from sending for cost to the graveyard, so it's effectively dead against Kashtira, which is quote-unquote the best deck of the format. However, we just went over the fact that this is going to be a really diverse format. There's going to be a lot of power creep in the form of the other non-Kashtira decks. That's not to say Kashtira is not going to be the best deck. It could possibly be still the best deck, but a lot of people are going to be playing combo decks. There are a lot of people are going to be making use of Revolution Synchron. They're going to be making use of the new support cards that all rely on making a huge combo board. So if you have a deck that allows you to take advantage of cards that you send to the graveyard, for example, if you're playing the Synchro deck and you're playing Water Enchantress, cards like that where you can just ditch to the graveyard and they're not a negative, or you can chain Forbidden Droplet to one of your spell cards and then also ditch one of these monsters, that's just free value. And the fact that it's a quick play spell means it's not always dead like Dark Ruler is. You can use it going first as well, and it could still be very, very powerful because your opponent cannot respond to this with any of the effects that you discard. So in my opinion, this could be a very powerful card that could see a resurgence if we do have a diverse format. It's basically live against every deck except for Kashtira, and it's very, very, very good being a quick play speed. So I would definitely recommend people start picking up this card again while you have the chance, while it's cheap. I don't think that back row removal is dead by any means. Even though we have a lot of combo decks, there's still a lot of annoying decks that make use of continuous spell and trap cards. For example, My Friend Purely, or the field spell rather. There are certain decks like Dark World which are counter-siding to popular side deck cards like Droll and Lockbird or Shifter, and they're siding cards like Skill Drain or other floodgates that you have to deal with. So having access to Cosmic Cyclone is always a plus. We talked about previous decks still being in the metagame, things like Runic Fountain, so being able to stop the Runic Fountain, in my opinion, is very, very powerful. And being a quick play speed that you can use going first or second against things like field spells, which are going to see a resurgence in the metagame. Certain people are playing ABCs even with like the Revolution Synchron, so being able to snipe a Union Hanger is always very important. Being able to snipe their back rows, their set infinite impermanences, so on and so forth. Being able to snipe a planet. I just think that this is just so good value that it should definitely be in everyone's side deck, or even for the purpose of hitting floodgates, or to be used offensively during your opponent's turn. And then the last card I want to go over is actually Xyz's Encore. So I know this is really tailored towards Purely, but I feel like Purely are going to be pretty impressive this upcoming format because they got a new card, Purely Noir, that's absolutely busted. This is the final XYZ that they required to fulfill their last remaining quick play spell, Purely Sleepy Memory. So now they can upgrade any of their Purelis or Pure Lilies into Purely Noir by targeting the previously dead Purely Sleepy Memory. And this card also has the added benefit of being a removal by being able to discard a card and then bouncing a card your opponent controls, or two, if it has Purely Sleepy Memory as material, which half of the time it does, more than half. And then on top of all of that, it has the effect where you can set a Purely Trap, so Purely Leap, onto the table directly from your deck when you do activate a Purely Quick Play spell. So it's very, very powerful. It easily allows you to set up an X Purely Noir that draws up to 4 cards if you have the field spell to attach the second copy of Sleepy Memory during your opponent's standby phase. And then on top of all of that, have the Purely Leap to go into the Noir. So I feel like this deck will be very oppressive, and I feel like Xyz Encore is the only one card that really deals with that, preventing them from getting the draw, as this can be used in draw phase. And then on top of all of that, being a quick play spell card that could potentially be used during your opponent's turn for defensive purposes as well. This card is very cheap right now. I think everyone should pick up a playset if it does prove that Purely is indeed tier 1, which I predict it will be. So this is the time to side this card, in my opinion. And yeah, that's about it for this video. If you guys have any other questions, comments, let me know below. Other than that, we'll see you in the next one.